Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood, a season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. Be sure to join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. I'm Steven, and today I'm joined by my friend Tom Stadum. How are you doing, Tom?
Hey, I'm doing so well, seriously. I think the last couple weeks I've had so much extra pep in my step. It is springtime, and really what springtime to me is hope, and I'm just so happy.
That's amazing. Springtime is hope and mud when you have a dog.
Yes, and we have two of them. And okay. Yes, I've been just telling people, just don't go in our backyard.
Just don't do it.
Yep.
Just don't do it.
Same with every other dog owner in the world.
I know. I was like, early on in my dog ownership, it was like, all right, I'm going to have the towel right by the door. Somewhere along the lines with kids, I just kind of gave up. It's just muddy now.
Ditto. Yeah. The struggle is real.
Dude, that's awesome. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your family, just kind of background. I know I'm excited to dive into kind of the topic today, but Who's Tom?
Yeah, so who is Tom? So I am, first and foremost, I just am just a passionate follower of Jesus. I think at the core of who I am, I'm just trying to be like him and just to enjoy just every day and every moment with him. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, which you obviously know, know Camila well. I have two beautiful kids, Lucy, who's turning 3 next month, and Bodie, 6 months old, next week. We have 2 dogs. We're dedicated Northsiders.
Okay.
You know, we looked at, when we were buying our first house, we looked at one house in South Fargo, and I just couldn't stand the thought of going to different Hornbachers, and I just said, Camila, we're going back north. So
Hornbachers, baby.
Yep, I know.
For those of you who aren't in the Fargo area,
trivial as that is, I couldn't. Is a bridge I could not cross.
But Hornbachers does it in a way that nobody else does.
I know. It's like it's bless them. And aside from that, I think, and people who know me, you certainly know me, and I've always taken a little bit of a different path in life. I am just at the core of who I am in so many different aspects. I'm just an entrepreneur as well. I know that I've been placed on planet Earth for such a time as this to create things, and that just seeps into so many different areas of life, and I am so thankful. I just love who God has made me. I'm just obviously have lots of things I'm working on. I am just so thankful though to have the opportunity to work in a field where I can be entrepreneurial, have businesses, create impact, and do it for Jesus.
I love that. And that's
spread
something
his goodness.
I've always, because it's not like we grew up together and you were at U of M, correct?
Yep, for a couple years.
Yeah, and so you kind of came in, I was friends with Camila, and then Tom came back. Tom and Camila had been dating for a long time, but just like the immediate impact that you make in a room, and just you're a light, you're a joy, and
that.
Your focus on the kingdom in your career path and just in your life is really inspiring to me from a close, and is a close, afar. But no, so I just appreciate you, and I'm pumped to have you on as a guest on this podcast that who knows where it's all going, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yes, I'm excited as well, and this is an interesting time to talk about this topic, and just in general too. I think the world has changed so fast. I think the world that we live in today is just fast paced, and to sit down in a room with somebody, have a conversation, this needs to happen more often. So props to you as well for
Thank you.
Taking really the time to do this.
For sure. And the topic that we've been alluding is finances.
Money.
I think as a young adult, there's many challenges.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I
sure.
like to call it the ambiguous adventure of young adult.
Yeah.
I just think there's so many moving pieces when it comes to career, home, family,
Yep.
friendships. But I think in the smack dab in the middle of that list is finances.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
a lot changes. It gets more complicated. You have more of it, and you're going like, whoa, what? What's the deal now? Like,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you see and you've seen, you know, especially in that young adult season with finances?
Yeah. So I think a couple notes. So I guess what I do for a living is I actually own a couple different businesses. I have a wealth management company that has been around for 60 years. So my grandfather started our practice in I think it's 1961 is when he got licensed. And my family has been helping. We just have a rich legacy in our area of serving people with their finances and with their businesses and whatnot. And then we're starting we have a technology company, a fintech company that we're starting that has just a similar to Fjell, but a bigger reach. So I think really just my mission and one of the things, like really a mandate from the Lord, is to help people do money right. And
Awesome.
that is just for the listeners, that's my background. And I think where people go wrong is and oftentimes they don't even know what they're doing.
Right.
We were talking a little bit before this how college and young adults in particular, life is, whether they know it or not at the time, is very defined. And even in America, there's a relatively set way, there's a set rhythm of life. And say what you want about that rhythm, it is actually, for many people, it is a blessing, sometimes a blessing in disguise. But there is a path that people take and that people perceive into the future. And so I think for a lot of young adults, they have a very defined, like, quarterly system of, quarter one, quarter two, quarter three in school. And they're getting their education. They have, they're surrounded by just, sometimes hundreds and thousands. Like if you go to NDSU, there's thousands of students year round. So life is, to some degree just predefined. But also what's happening is, students and young adults are just, they're just looking out and they're seeing the world that we live in. And what happens is, people, they just have a relationship with money that they don't even necessarily know they have. And so once the guardrails are off and you say, all right, it's like, if you got an engineering degree, like, go be an engineer.
Right.
If you're in finance, like, go find a job if you're accounting, etc. And then all of a sudden the guardrails are off, and then stuck in that is your relationship with money. And a lot of people don't really define what money is to them, and that is just like the start of, I think really a lot of people are just stressed about it.
For sure. I think there's so many angles to it,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, kind of leading up to, it's like you throughout college, most people don't have an abundance of money. It's like meeting needs, it's just living paycheck to paycheck to pay college, to do whatever.
Yeah.
And then
the definition,
you get that first paycheck and you don't have the other things, like you have an abundance, and it's like, now what do I do with this and how do I handle that? So I think it's like a major thing. And how do you tie that in with the kingdom? Like, I know money is one of the things that Jesus talks about a lot, and it's a very big biblical theme. And so I think that's something that, I'd love for you to kind of share on too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a framework.
Yep, for sure. And Jesus is, of all business mentors I've ever had, whether that's me reading about Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, these really titans of the world today, or, mentors, personal mentors who have, taken and poured into me, the man of Jesus, is my mentor in business, and in money and well. And there's some pretty incredible threads to pull with this idea. And I think Jesus's life in many ways, like Jesus taught us, like through his life, sacrifice. He taught us about love. He taught us, honestly, a lot about happiness. And all of that is wealth. And I think what Jesus modeled to us is, in regards to money, is, money is a tool. Like, that's what it is. Like, you are rich if you have a lot of money. But I think Jesus taught us how to be wealthy. And I think what being wealthy is, just whatever you have, wherever you are in life, it's contentment. It's literally, like, to me, it's just presence. And you think about, like, the presence of God, like where you are with him, like that is life. Like, that is beauty. That is love. Like, that is our destiny as believers, is to really be present. And I think Jesus is very clear when he says, don't worry about tomorrow. Like, for tomorrow has its own worries. He's like, I have you. And in regards to money, it takes a while to grow. Like, it takes a while to find your way. It takes a while to, be at a place of security. And I think what Jesus has modeled is, and what really, like, what being wealthy is just to be content and to be, like, for me, to be just present with you, like no one else, like no other care, and just enjoying this conversation and just being content. And I think where people go wrong with money, and I'm not, like, saying that there's true hardship, like, people, the stuff that I have personal conversations with, whether they're clients or not, it's just really hard. Like, bad things happen, unjust things happen with money. But with that being said, there's so much to being content in your situation. And I think where people have a hard time is lack of contentment, and it's really envy. It's like, I want this. I don't have this.
Right.
I don't drive this. I don't have this. And that leads to discontentment and envy, and that's bad.
bad envy, bad. Yeah, no, I feel like that's something that I sense too, or even in our own journey. Like, we just bought a house in November, and we felt, like, feeling wise, we felt late to the game. Like, we felt like we were behind. And I think that's a trend that I can see and detect in young adults, is that there is, like, this expectation, whether it's just finances or not, but with finances in particular, that I'm at this point by this certain time, and if I'm not, I'm behind. And how would you handle that? Like, if you're sitting down with somebody that maybe has that fear, or has that, even like that yearning of, like, well, because obviously financial planning and goals is a huge part of what you do, but how would you handle that on, like, the heart side as well?
I would say, this is pretty frank, but try and kill that as fast as possible. Seriously, it's money in many ways is an illusion. And I, every day of the week, I see and have, privy information to, numbers and things at a scale that, most people will just never see. And that, like, that feeling of being behind, like, you will always feel behind if that is what you choose to believe. And that is a hard reality. But I think you have to understand, and people need to understand, that there's no end game. Like, you've probably heard the saying, like, no matter where you go, you can't take your money with you.
Right.
It's like, there isn't necessarily an end game with money. And I think when you look at the lives of the richest people in the world, most of them are divorced. And it's like, for people who have an abundance, like the generations and generations of it, that doesn't mean anything. It means something, but it doesn't.
Right.
So the feeling of feeling behind, like, if that is a belief that, you continue to choose to partner with, you will always feel behind, because when you buy that house, you're going to feel, something inside of you that says, wow, I made it. But then 2 years down the line, you're just going to want something else because that's just human nature.
You go to a friend's house, and you're like, oh, I wish I had this space in my house, or like it is like that mindset. I think that is such like you keep chasing, and you keep going until when, and like you said, I think it's not an end game. There is no end game to it, and I think that's sometimes for me, it's what is my personal end game, like what is success to me, what is legacy to me, what is like a meaningful life to me. And because I think the default, if we follow, like you were talking about the rhythm of life, like we all have a rhythm or a rule of life, whatever you want to call it, like we all have that, whether we know it or not. And sometimes we just default to the cultural norm, which tends to be that chase, and that next thing is always the best thing. And how do you fight against that? Like, I know you just kind of briefly talked about that, but what else, or how would you handle that?
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is there's the biggest companies in the world are constantly selling us stuff. You will just go, like when I drove here, I mean, think of how many banks, think of how many, I passed by a bunch of dental offices, passed by a bunch of fast food restaurants. Those restaurants and like everything is designed to sell you something.
Right.
Like we're constantly getting bombarded, like buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. And that's just the world we live in. And it's just always going to be the case in a modern economy. So I think, we just have to understand, and I think as believers too, we just have to understand just our world and just understand, where we're at. And then I think, what I want to like how am I live my life is like, I want to control the controllables. Like I want to control what I can control and just, kill as fast as I can, things that aren't biblical, that don't line up with, what Jesus teaches us, by the testimony of his life. And, money's really hard because most people think people have more of it and they don't have enough. And I think another item on that is it's really hard. Like I've seen hundreds of families' finances, and it's a very, like, money's incredibly unique. Like people's financial situations are incredibly unique to them in ways that, like, if you don't do what I do, you really don't understand. Like you only see yourself, and like again, it's just really easy to like comparisons or like, oh, I don't have enough. Like I need to get here. And it's just hard, and realizing it's hard, but really finding your identity not in what you have, but in who you serve and who, died for us, for our sins.
Well, and the Bible even talks about you can't serve God and mammon. Like it's not boycotting like financial gain or anything like that, but it can become a God. It can become
absolutely
what we serve and who we serve, and so I think that's at the core of it too, is like, who are you serving? And I think for young adults, sometimes I think that spiritual component gets left in the dust, because I think we tend to, as humans, compartmentalize.
Yeah.
We have like the financial portion, we have the spiritual portion, we have the family portion, when it all really, as believers, like it's holistic.
It's
like
just
it
one,
all is spiritual. Like it all contributes to our discipleship towards Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think when we fail to understand that, we can live in a way that has money in its own lane and doing its own thing. And that affects the heart in a certain way.
Absolutely. And I think like what's unique about money is it's just all around us. Like it is, like everyone checks their bank accounts, like everyone checks their, portfolios, or people are just very aware of money because that's just the way God made it.
Right.
It's like, money is a tool, and, God put money on this earth for a reason, because, and think of where it got us. It got us to amazing places, of things that, money has, how people have been able to grow it, and just the world we live in. I mean, it is a miracle. I mean, it is truly like how the system works. It's beautiful. It is really, really cool. But it's just all around us. And so like money just like you think about like money, sex, and politics, like, those things are just really deep. They're everywhere. You get bombarded, and it's really easy to lose yourself in what other people are telling you about how you should live. When in reality, it's like, no, you should live your life that God has called you. And I think one thing that's unique to Camille and I is, yes, we have an abnormal financial life. I understand what I have at a young age is not normal. But, we've just chosen to believe that God is good. And, I've chosen, and I just know, and I just think about, with money, I think about the parable of the talents, the guy who, buried it in a field, and Jesus was like, what a waste.
Right.
Sorry, man. And the guy who invested in turned into 5, and the guy who invested into 10. And we've really just taken that to heart about what we're trying to create, through our businesses and through, in our personal lives as well, is, we want to let God be God in our finances. We want to let God be God in how we treat people, in how we operate our businesses, and, really try our best to model what he lived out, through our businesses. And as simple as it sounds, like letting God be God over your finances is what everyone needs and what everyone should be doing. Like, don't be God over your own money, because you're going to fail.
Right. That's so good. I think the other unique thing too is, the woman's might, the woman who gave the last of what she had. And Jesus said, like, that basically is generosity. Like, generosity isn't the person that gives the most. It's the person that sacrifices and gives, not when they can't or shouldn't, but she was rewarded for her tiny little gift because it was a sacrifice to her. And I think when you just look at the kingdom principles, it's oftentimes upside down. It's blessed is the meek, like the things that are rewarded in the kingdom of God are sometimes the opposite in like culture. And so I think you said wisely, like, we need to understand and have a pulse of what's going on in the world, like, for sure, but we also need a pulse on what's happening in the kingdom and like what
absolutely.
God has set out, and then let that be the culture that overrules is the whole part of the whole point of following Jesus too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, and I was telling some college students, I was at the business school yesterday presenting to a class for some interns we're going to be hiring this summer. And I just told them, essentially, be your own product. Like, don't be the product of somebody else's dream. I was like, you are God's dream, and, work hard to be proud of who you are and who you are to become, versus just, squandering your time and, sitting on Instagram or sitting on, Facebook, and you're just enriching, the shareholders of those companies. And I know that sounds harsh, but, people just like in regards to money too, you have to control what you can control. And if you have a huge, like, life happens for sure, but a lot of people feel out of control with their money, and that's where people get stuck. And so many people feel stuck financially. And what's interesting enough is This Isn't Going Somewhere is the name of your, the podcast we're on right now. And, people need to figure out, and people need to know that's like, it's not God's will or his desire for you to be stuck financially.
Right.
It's just not. It's like, we're all supposed to be going somewhere. It's like, our relationship with Jesus is a walk. Paul says, run the race. Like, we're to be moving, and people just get stuck financially, and it's really sad. And that just, when that happens, people just feel hopeless. And when people feel hopeless, they just hunker down and they just don't move, and hope deferred makes the heart sick, and they just stop. They stop caring, they stop trying, they stop trying to make more money, or they're just, they lose. And one of the things about money too is the fruit of the Holy Spirit is self-control. And, with money, like, there's, like, again, kind of like letting God be God of your money, the being self-controlled is incredibly important. And what that looks like isn't necessarily like being super frugal, by no means, but like that is something that like Christians and just people in general really need to know and understand is,
Right.
take control. It's like, if you want to don't want to become rich, or don't want to make a lot of money by not being in control, because what you're setting yourself up for is just massive disappointment. And so many people are disappointed with their money as well,
Right.
because they want to be X, but they're here and they view that bridge and it's just too far to cross. And then they get, again, just hunkered down and stuck.
That's good. I know everybody's stories are so different, you know, like everybody's starting points so different with finances, but maybe just as kind of like a framework of what are some of the things that you would tell somebody that is maybe, again, it's all fluid, but is at a point where they feel stuck, or they feel like, that new grad 5 years out that's trying to get their bearings straight with this. Like, what are some of the things that you recommend kind of being some first steps and things to practically do?
Yep. So there's just some practicalities. Before the practicalities, it's incredibly important to know that your mindset about money matters far more than habits.
Yep.
Like, habits will just die. It's like,
yeah,
habits will just die, like, if there's not a proper mindset behind them. So
I've tried to make my bed for like consecutive days, and I've made my bed 3 times in the last 3 years. So
yeah.
habits don't work all the time.
I'm gonna have good habits. Like, well, okay, it's probably not gonna work, but
right.
That's the mindset and the heart matters so much, financially. And some people, and a lot of our clients are this way. They're just good with money, and they've done a lot of things right. And I think a lot of our clients aren't particularly abnormal people. They just have really mastered, I think, the self-control of really just saving money. So I think, practically speaking, for young people, we always tell them to, have a good mindset. Like, have a good mindset about money. Like, you can be unrighteous and rich, you can be unrighteous and poor, you can be righteous and poor, and you can be righteous and rich. Like, just because you're somebody, wherever you're at, like, you can be holy or not. And so wherever you are, like, just choose holiness. And then, practically speaking, there's just a way the world works. There's just a way to make money. Very easy case here is, if you're a doctor, you're probably going to have some assets when you're 60.
Right.
It's like, that's a pretty obvious thing. Like, there's a way the world works, and you just need to, or people just need to choose who they want to become and who they feel like God has for them. So if you feel like God wants you to have money, or if generosity is on your heart, well, then just work to, make more money. Do things that, make yourself valuable in the workplace. Like, be good at making money. And then the reason having a large net worth, which that's really what wealth is. Like, income is income. True, like, being considered wealthy, not like of the heart, but, from what the world thinks, is owning assets. And what's hard about money is, first, you have to make it. Second, you have to keep it. And third, you have to grow it. And most people, like, if you don't understand those sequences, you don't even get to how you grow it, which is step number 3.
Right.
And so, from just a very fundamental, how you grow money is, first you have to make it. You have to be smart enough to, have what we call, a profit margin, like extra money to save.
Right.
And once you have that, you need to figure out how you're going to grow it. So I think if you think about running your finances like a company, most people, they just spend whatever's in their checking account. And that's like a general rule of thumb, no matter who you are. So, whether you're good at making money or not, you need to be able to go through those 3 steps. And if you're wherever you're at, it's being content with where you're at too.
Right. It's both,
Yeah.
It is the contentment and the stewardship aspect of it too. And I think that's like an encouragement, I feel like, to somebody listening. It's identify maybe if the mindset needs to correct. Like I'm like a journal person. So if I'm leaving this conversation, I will leave this conversation. I'll take a notebook and I will journal like what's my mindset on money and what needs to change. And then I'll do like, where am I at? Am I having a hard time making it, keeping it, growing it? And what's the next thing that I need to do there too? I think first, just like self-identifying is huge too. And I think sometimes, and I've been here, it can just be so overwhelming. Like when you get to a new season, like if it's, for a lot of college students, making it becomes easy to an extent, because now I have a job, like I have a steady income. And then it's like, okay, now keeping it's challenging because my classmate just bought a car. Do I need a new car? Like they're getting a house, but they're only putting 2% down. Should I do that? Or like, there's so many things that, and so sometimes it can become so complex that almost like you default back to your default, which oftentimes is unhealthy, like mindsets and unhealthy habits.
Yep.
And I think that's part of like the challenge too, is sometimes if somebody's at the growing stage, it's like, well, there's 1,000 options that I can do to grow it. Like, what's the best one? So how do you handle somebody that maybe feels overwhelmed with finances and just like a current state with goals? Yeah.
Yep. The world is incredibly complex. When you think about just what God created, it is unbelievably complex. One of the things that baffles my mind that I'm incredibly excited to learn about when we get to heaven is the universe is always expanding. And my question is, well, what's it expanding into? I was like, if the universe itself is like moving outwards and they can measure it, like what's it moving into? And yet at the same time, Jesus says, well, if you like, just come to me, and like my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Super simple. very, right. Very, very simple. So, when it comes to money, it's just keep it simple. It's like, it's really not that hard. It is incredibly hard, but it is incredibly easy. And, like choosing to partner with just the simplicity of what it needs to be, because it really isn't that hard.
Right. So,
and it's a choice. So like, I think what's interesting with what you said is, people are overwhelmed so they don't do anything. Like I understand, like I was really overwhelmed yesterday when I got home from work. I just had a bad day, lots of stuff going on, and it's just like I was overwhelmed. But like it's important to realize, particularly with money, that like you are partnering with, in many cases, what that actually is anxiety. And we just know that it's like, cast your cares on him. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, make your, make your, what you are looking for to God. That's what Paul says. So it's focusing on the simplicity and not getting stuck.
Right.
Like keep moving, and whatever that looks like. And how I've personally lived this out in my life, and one of the reasons why we have what we have is I just don't quit. Just keep moving forward. I told my team this week, I was like, if we need to go way out here and we find that that's not the right direction, then we're just going to go over here, and that we're just not going to stop. And so much of this too is about faith. It's like, doing this walk well requires faith. And it's like with money, it's like, just keep moving forward and just trust that the Lord is going to guide your steps.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just keeping, like, just keep saving. And if you want to buy a house, just keep saving money. Like, keep saving money. Don't necessarily stress about this house or that. Just submit it to the Lord.
Yeah.
And just say, like, God, you are the God of my finances. And in that, just being content. And again, this may sound, people may say like, oh, Tom, like you're rich. Like, oh, it must be easy for you to say. It's like, okay, sure. It's like, sure, we have more than most people our age. I'm not discounting, that fact. But I've also, had scenarios where it's like, yeah, things have been tight, or wow, we just quit a job that was incredibly cushy. We could have been very happy, but we feel like God has more for us.
Right.
And it's just about working to please him.
And I think that's the key too, is there's a motive element to it. And like from afar with you and Camila, like that's been something that's been so attractive, is just that, like, you guys, one, you wouldn't know your financial standing outside of, you guys are extremely generous, and you guys like live to give and just like live to bless. And like, it's so clear that it's not just something, mine. Like, it's something that you guys just want to be a blessing. You want to teach other people so that the kingdom can grow. And I think that's a really thing. But for me, even in the different stages, it's like, why, that was something that we came to with buying a house. Like, it was like, why do we want a house? Is it because that's what is supposed to be done now? Is that because we feel like that's the next step? Or is it because like we want our home to be a blessing to people, that we can invite people in, and we want security for our kids, and things like that are like, those are things that we desire for our children to have, and a neighborhood to love and invest on. And we've just seen that as spring has come, like neighbors congregating outside again. Praise God.
Yeah.
And so I think even just like vehicles and I think budgeting is hard for some people, because sometimes to face reality, like I teach on time management sometimes, and I use like financial analogy all the time, because we have to first print out the bank statement and circle the areas that maybe are tripwires of like, oh, I spent a lot at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we just avoid the pain. And I think that to me is sometimes with finances and everything, there's like a pain aversion that's natural in human existence.
Yep.
But sometimes pain is good. Pain is also what allows us to change, and it allows us to go back to Jesus for relief and support. And, but I think sometimes that it's just the avoiding of pain that produces bad mindsets and habits sometimes.
So pain aversion in money is real. And a lot of people, I think, are afraid of those honest conversations of, oh my gosh, we're here. And again, that is people, I've just come across so many situations with people where they find themselves and they ask, how on earth did we get here? And it's scary. And even the world we're living in right now is just, it's scary. What's happening in Ukraine is scary. There's just no question about it. And I think when you bring it back to, just seeing your personal finances and you ask, gosh, how did we get here? This hurts, or we blew the budget, or we, made this major mistake. I think what Jesus would say, and I think what he does is, when you ask for forgiveness from Jesus, he just doesn't remember it. And I just remember hearing this testimony of somebody, I think it might've been a pastor in South America, maybe Brazil. And this pastor did something wrong, and he repented, and I think, but he always felt like this guilt. And I think Jesus came to him in a dream, and this gentleman asked Jesus, I did this, like how can you love me? And in the dream, Jesus said, I don't remember what you're talking about. Like, boom.
Yeah.
And I think the story there is obviously he says, he casts our sins and really our mistakes, like our fall as humans, as far as the east is from the west, which is it's eternity. And he chooses to just forgive and forget. And obviously on earth we have, scar tissue that we just can't, like that, those memories will be with us. And when it comes to money and just that pain, it's just don't find yourself in a situation and then just shame yourself to death. Don't condemn yourself. Don't just, pull the knife out after your mistake and then just stick another one in. That does nothing for your finances. It does nothing in your marriage. It's like, okay, this hurts. Let's move on.
Right.
It's a new day tomorrow. Let's get better tomorrow. That's one of the reasons why budgeting is hard, by the way, and why, we're starting a new company to address some of these issues, because what happens with people on a very practical note is they blow their budget, and they have a conversation with their spouse. Well, honey, we blew our budget. And then they're like, oh, well, that happened in the past. Okay. And then just cycle. Because the problem isn't like if you're just consuming information about yourself that's already happened, it doesn't really necessarily help change your behavior, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of these, practically speaking, these tools are just, the reason they don't work is because, again, once you blow your budget, like, well, okay, I blew our budget, let's get better next month. That doesn't, the core issue is solving the mindset.
Right. Well, one of the alternative titles to the podcast was going to be One Small Step, kind of going off the idea of, one, like being a young adult feels like you're learning to walk on the moon sometimes, but also
yeah, for sure,
it is just one small step. And I think that wherever people find themselves, if they blew the budget, if they don't have a budget, if they, if they are totally mystified by money and like, what is it? I think that's just like, what's the one small step I can take? One of the questions that I was kind of thinking on was, you've talked about there's information that you're privy to, and you see people's clients' financials on a daily basis. Are there any trends that maybe stand out to you of like things that maybe if more people understood or knew, it would maybe change the way that we think or the way that we handle finances? For
sure. This is going to be a somewhat depressing answer, but I think the biggest trend that I've seen, and again, I'm coming up on 10 years doing this, is people are just broadly speaking really messed up. And it really is sad. I think what we've gone through the last couple of years, particularly in COVID, has really, shaken the foundation of many people. So I think one of the trends that I'm seeing, and I actually told this to a major financial advising publication last week, was the biggest trend I'm seeing is that people are just really hurting right now. They're hurting with their money, but even more so, they're just hurting. There's been lots of people have just stopped going to church, and that is scary. It's scary for those people who stopped. Like, that is a very foundational piece, and people's foundations have been shaken. And then now 2022 has been, very hard. There's a war going on right now, and there's, somebody is dropping bombs on people who just want to have a quiet life doing whatever they're doing. That is fundamentally scary. So the biggest trend I'm seeing is just people are just in a weird spot, and just for people to acknowledge that they're in a weird spot, and that the answer isn't government. The answer isn't money. The answer isn't cars, or the answer isn't blame it on inflation. The answer is Jesus. And that is the biggest trend. I could talk about technology. I could tell you about tech stacks, that I could tell you about startups. And it's like, no, the trend is the human condition. And people need to understand their human condition. People need to have an honest conversation. One of the most profound things that I've remembered in my 20s was my brother-in-law told me, Tom, get used to having honest conversations with yourself. And just the importance of telling yourself the truth. And really that truth comes from the Word of God. And that truth is letting the Word of God mold you and shape you, and constantly pouring into yourself just the Word of God. Yeah. The word that moves you, like getting into the culture of the kingdom. And people, that's not the reality for a lot of people. And that just invades into their relationship with money. And they're just, people are just looking for different avenues to find identity. And that's what we talked about at the beginning. And so the trend is, wow, how did we get here? The answer is Jesus. And then once we, have agreed on that, and just in our own lives, just with our money, it's just day by day. step by
awesome.
step.
Yeah.
You can't double your net worth in a day, but you can choose in your mind to say, okay, this is the path I'm going to go on in Jesus' name. Help me get there, God.
So good. The kind of the idea of the going somewhere kind of comes from like the story of Abraham. Like when I was moving, things were kind of shaking up, and I was like, I didn't know what was happening. Like I didn't know where my life was leading. I was so certain and secure. And then I read in Genesis where God tells Abraham, "Go to the place that I'll show you." And I've thought about that over and over again for the last like 3 or 4 years, of just like, to the place I will show you. That seems very descriptive.
Like, nice one, God.
But I think that's the call to life, is like, go to the place I'll show you. Walk with me. Go one step at a time. And knowing your human condition, it all kind of circles back to that for me. Sometimes it's just like, I don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
It is scary. Like I look at the news, or I open my Twitter feed, and beyond the top, it's just all sports for me. But
yeah,
like then it becomes scary again. And I think that is like such a core right there, is understanding that, knowing that, and then what's the one small thing? Where can we go from here?
Yeah.
So good.
And tying that into what I said earlier about what is wealth, and wealth is, in my opinion, is just being present and being okay with literally where you are at with your next breath. And that is what I think. I mean, that is the essence that will be heaven. That is heaven on earth, is just being content with where you are, with wherever you are in the journey, because God is, I mean, that's honestly, that's hilarious. It's like, go to the place I'm going to show you. It's like, okay.
It's like a mean joke to a friend.
Yeah. And God, you got to say, he's just hilarious. He's the definition of humor, but also it's about the journey. And I think with regards to finances and money, like, people view money as the end destination.
Right.
And just a little inside knowledge, the news tells us you need to have more. The news tells us you need to cut back. When you get into the insides and when you start reading about, people who have far more than enough, the conversation shifts from purpose, legacy, and people just don't understand that. So if you are here, the world says, well, you need to do this. For the people who are already there, they're like, well, you need to do this. So therein lies the paradox, which it's just the journey.
Right.
Just wherever you're at, just know that there's this great godliness and contentment, and just enjoy the presence, the presence of Jesus, like the hope within us, and just the person he created right before you.
For sure. I think too, sometimes even I've heard it from like the Christian perspective, I think sometimes we can view with finances generosity as the end game. And I don't necessarily view generosity as the end game. I think generosity is in the midst of the core, and like it's part of that mindset. What would you say? Obviously, generosity is a huge part of finances as a believer, but what's your take on that? Like, how do you talk about that?
Yeah. So generosity, to me, again, you're definitely going to see a trend here. It's a mindset. Like, generosity is a way in which you just live your life. And I have to credit Dave Ramsey for this on his application that, probably a lot of our followers or listeners here have used. The number one thing is give money away. And I think at the core of capitalism, at the core of a business, is, in a very strange way, and people might not necessarily agree with this, but it's generosity. It's, some idea that is just shared with many, many people, and lots of great livelihoods can come out of that idea. And that inherently is generous.
Right.
And it's sharing in the prosperity of a valuable idea. It's not hoarded by somebody. It's shared. And generosity is, I think, when you look at really wealthy people in the terms of assets and income and whatnot, they're very, very generous. And so I think one of the interesting concepts and ideas to share with the listeners here with us is that a chicken before the egg? It's like, do you have to become rich to be generous? Well, the answer is No. It's like you need to be generous with what you have now. In a lot of cases, if it's not money, it's time. And be generous with what you can give. And that is just like a mindset.
Yeah. I think to have the idea of like, I'll be generous when is the opposite of generosity. That is based on like, well, I can take care of everything else, so then I will maybe have a little left over. But generosity is giving even when it hurts. It's giving of something that I own for the betterment of somebody else, or whatever a true definition of it is. That's something that I've viewed it as, is like, if we wait till that point when it makes more sense to do it, we won't do it. Like, it's something that
for sure
is a hard thing that has to build with us, you know? And I think that's challenging to understand, especially because like there's a difference when you're looking at a bank account and you've got $500 worth of expenses and you've made 505. It's like, oh man, to part with that 5, what if I need that 5?
Yeah.
And then it changes throughout. But if we can part with that 5 and maybe give 5, 10 more, trusting like God's going to cover it, if following like a more biblical principle too, you know, from the Old Testament on, the tithe, the 10%, like there's so much there. It's like, it wasn't just to get the church rich, you know?
Yeah.
Like that wasn't the point of it. God was doing something in our hearts, you know?
Absolutely. It's something that accomplishes many different areas. And I think, I've had so many, just financial miracles, where we've given and something crazy. And I don't want to go on here and say, well, if you give money away, God's going to give X amount back. It's like, no, that's not the purpose of it. I think God rewards those who live in faith, and generosity is just another word in some cases of just stewardship. And when we realize that our lives are not ours, like our money is not ours, like my businesses aren't mine, like I'm just here to steward them for such a time as this. And I was telling some friends earlier this week, I was like, it's one of the best things about parenthood is when you realize that the kids, like, yes, my kids are my kids, but really they're God's. And I'm responsible for them. I will be the best dad I know how to be. But at the end of the day, it's like, I know Jesus died for them just like he did for me. And therefore, I'm going to let God be, like, move in their lives. I'm not going to lord over them. I'm not going to lord over my money. I'm just going to let him be God. And I'm just going to commit to a lifestyle of faith. I'm going to commit to a lifestyle of going big, knowing that God is bigger.
Yeah.
And that is something that, with regards to finances and generosity, is, people need to know, just go for it. Just go for it. Be generous, start a business, let God be God. And if you're in a career that isn't like that, where you can't just necessarily just start a business, like a nurse, for example, well, just be content in your situation and just let God be God. For sure.
So good. I'm pumped. I want to have you back on if you'd be willing to carry on these conversations. I think it's I think there's a lot of things that are striking a chord for me, and I think for many others. So I just appreciate you being here. But there's one question I always ask, and it's this: is if you were to give advice to 20-year-old Tom, what would it be? And this could be finances or not. But like, what's a piece if you had the opportunity to look at Tom in the face, what would you say?
I had a hard time. I was one of the many who had a hard time after a couple years after college, and life was good, but life was different than what I thought. And I wish I would tell myself, you're going to go through hard times. Don't fear the hard times. Don't fear those, because what God has in store for you is so much better than what you could ever have imagined. So that's what I would tell myself is, you're going to get just slammed by life. But where God has brought me from my lowest of lows, to God be the glory, man.
Yeah.
Like, he is so faithful and so good. And Camille and I and my family and just those in our lives and just our businesses, like, we are living in the land of plenty of goodness. And it's really fun. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. Dude, I love it. Love you,
Love
man.
it.
Appreciate you
Likewise, man.
being on. Any final words for our listeners today? Anything that you want to leave them with?
I would just say, don't overcomplicate it, and just don't quit, and just enjoy your family. If you have kids, hug your kids. If you have a wife or a husband, tell them you love them. Like, that's what this is all about. And just don't get overstressed, and just take it one day at a time.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks for being on. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. I hope there's something that you can walk away with, and I'll do a little outro or a little conversation after conversation for you. But Tom, appreciate it. Until next time.
Likewise. Hey, have a good one, man.
Hey, appreciate you. Hey, friends. Thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the podcast. I had a blast talking with my friend Tom. I know from the onset of this podcast, having conversations about money and finances has been a big priority for me. I know that for Taylor and I and many other young adults, finances and money is a source of stress, it's a source of anxiety, it's a source of struggle. And these are the conversations that I want to have. I think what I've realized is that more often than not, when we have an area that's uncomfortable for us or that we don't feel like we are great at, we usually just avoid it. And we just kind of, go back to default, whatever the default setting is, whatever we grew up and however we experience money in our, life to this point is what our default becomes. Or the culture. What is culture saying about money? How does culture say that I should spend my money? And that's not where I want to be. I want to be kingdom driven in everything that I do. And that's why I loved what Tom talked about, that before we can really have conversations about habits and practices, we have to manage our money mindset. We need to have a mindset that allows us to keep God first in our finances, that just is something that allows us to go in a direction that we actually want to go. So often we can get kind of drawn into the comparison trap, the envy trap, or finding, fulfillment or success or just belonging with money and the things that we own and the things that we possess and the way that we spend it. But really there's a bigger picture there, and there's a mindset that we can have that allows us to honor God with our finances as we honor Him in every other area of our lives. So that's the question this week is, what's your money mindset? My encouragement to you is to really take some time to think about it, but also have a conversation, whether with your spouse, with a close friend, with a roommate. Just have a conversation that allows you to kind of unearth maybe some of the mindsets that you've had, some of the default settings that maybe you just haven't even processed through or haven't even thought through, to really be able to grow and take a step forward. And so that's kind of the encouragement for you this week, is have that conversation. What's your money mindset? I know I would love for you to maybe share your thoughts with me over at Instagram at goingsomewhere.podcast so we can keep this conversation going. Also, to help grow the podcast, review it, rate it, subscribe wherever you listen. It helps get the word out. So does sharing it. So I know it may feel like I'm begging for response, but I just really believe in what we're doing. I believe in the conversations we're having. I really love the people that these conversations are with, and I think more people need to hear about it. So please do me a favor, share it, like it, do all those things. I appreciate you. But as always, this podcast is brought to you by Northview. This is a resource of Northview Church. And so I'd love for you to, if you're ever in Fargo-Moorhead, stop by. One, I would love to meet you. I would love to enjoy church with you, but it's just an amazing place where God's changing lives and really doing some incredible things. So check it out. And I appreciate them for always creating a space for me and allowing this to take place. So thank you to Northview. Thank you to you for listening. Love ya, and we'll see you next week.